Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals. Today we have some rather unfortunate news for the low-end AR-15 market. But before we get into that, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as that is all free and does help us out quite a bit. And go ahead and leave an F in the comment section down below for our soon-to-be-departed Anderson Manufacturing, the Poverty Pony. Now, what kicked all of this off is an email from Orion Wholesale claiming that Anderson Manufacturing is indeed going out of business. Now, since this email has come out, I've had several people reach out to me and tell me that yes, this is indeed true from people who work inside of Anderson, and also that the company is in talks or already finalized to be sold to none other than Ruger. Now, there have been some other uncorroborated claims about embezzlement and other financial issues that led to the sale of Anderson basically being forced. Pushing all of that to the side, what this actually means for you is that Ruger is acquiring all of the assets and names that Anderson has made. Anderson is probably most well known for their lower receivers. As the literal poverty pony, you could usually pick them up for very low dollar amounts and have a good time. Funnily enough, I actually have a couple Anderson lower receivers, and they're one of the only ones that I have that are actually out of spec. The magazine catch is actually just too high on one, so it actually will not physically seat a fully loaded magazine, so the poverty pony did live up to its reputation. Very recently, within the last year or so certainly, they also tried a last-ditch attempt at some LE contracts, I suppose, with their Frontline series, which was sort of a upgraded model from their basic poverty pony, so you could call it a middle-class pony, I suppose, with the Frontline series. While that obviously did garner some attention, it obviously was not enough to save it from getting bought up by big old Bill Ruger. And while that might be a sad thing for some of you out there, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. On the surface, this may seem like somewhat of a strange buyout, as Ruger already makes a budget AR. They even make the Ruger RXM, which is basically a Gen 3 Glock clone, and Anderson has the Kiger, their Frontline series of ARs, and a wide variety of components that they make in-house. Now, there's some speculation about how much they actually make in-house. Regardless of that, they do have true manufacturing capability, which Ruger is probably interested in. Now, the fact that Anderson is already tooled up on a Glock 19 clone means that they can take that production and put it towards their RXM, which I'm sure has been selling fantastically. And they can also integrate their current AR lines into the Ruger lineup, or keep them separate and just use some of that manufacturing capability to kind of separate out the brand even more and give them a much wider impact. So overall, I wouldn't necessarily say that Anderson is gone, just under new management, and I'm not saying that that new management is going to do any better than the old management. And this seems to be part of a larger trend in the gun industry of late. We've seen several low-tier manufacturers, at least in terms of cost, kind of go under this year. Earlier we had Delton close doors, which, if you're not familiar, they were also a budget AR manufacturer, and they actually made some pretty decent stuff for the money. Aero Precision has been having trouble shipping anything, even though they expanded all of their product lines simultaneously, and apparently they're also having trouble paying their vendors. Now, what does this mean for the industry as a whole? Well, it does seem that the dreaded Trump slump, or a low-end squeeze, has been applied to the market. Now, there are several factors here. Everybody is essentially doing the same thing and fighting over the exact same space. Anderson, Delton, Ruger, all of the guys, Palmetto State Armory, are fighting over the same market share, and that is cheap ARs and cheap Glock clones. And to be fair, Palmetto State Armory's success in both of these metrics has probably not helped Anderson or Delton all that much. If you're going to get a much flashier, higher featured product for just about the same money from someone like PSA, you're probably going to go with one of those options that's a little bit more flashy, has a lot of marketing behind it, rather than something like Anderson or Delton, or name your other budget AR brand manufacturer. You combine that with a reduction or slowdown in sales because we have a red president in office, And that spells disaster for the low-end market, especially if you don't have LE contracts or military contracts to fall back on. The only thing you have is volume, because again, these guys don't make a lot of money on each individual item. They can only keep in business by volume. Palmetto State Armory, while their volume is certainly down, I'm sure that they're still putting out insane numbers compared to everybody else in the space. What we're seeing currently in the market is a sort of consolidation where companies are buying up just about everything that's available, whether that's for the manufacturing capability, the names, anything that they can do to drive sales or increase their value for shareholders. So I think we're going to continue to see this into 2025 and 2026 and probably beyond. A lot of the small guys are not going to be able to stay afloat, and they are going to get swallowed up by a bigger fish. And for all of those smaller, struggling companies out there in the market currently, you're going to have to find a way to differentiate yourself from the rest of the market. You can't just make a budget AR, you can't just make a budget Glock clone. Everybody does that already, and if they already have the market share, well, you're not doing anything exciting enough to claw that back for yourself. To compound this with additional factors, you also have the powder shortage, which is why AAC just laid off even more of their workforce after they already allegedly laid off approximately half of their staff, this according to inside sources. Ammo prices aren't falling as fast as people would like, while bottom tier AR and Glock clones are basically at the floor in terms of what is actually profitable. You add low volume to the mix and suddenly there's not enough money to go around for these smaller companies, so again, they end up either going away or getting eaten by someone else. The solutions to these problems are unfortunately somewhat complex. If you can't just continue to cut costs without losing money, well, you're going to somehow have to justify your higher price tag and differentiate yourself somehow in the marketplace, which a lot of these companies have failed to do. A bit of a dour video, to be sure, on the current state of the market, at least on the low end, where it's a very stagnant, stacked place at the moment, which is going to cause some of the players to leave the market. And I do foresee this to continue at least into 2026, if not longer, unless new avenues for revenue appear, such as the HPA, and suddenly everybody can flood the market with suppressors, which are a high margin item. So that actually could help a lot of companies if that gets passed, as any company that's able to take advantage of that quickly would no doubt receive a huge cash influx from people wanting to get their hands on new, inexpensive, or even mid-tier suppressors without all that hassle of the NFA. But that is the video for today, gentlemen. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.